Now, only 1 in about 100,000 women get TSS, toxic shock syndrome, but about 50% of those, it's fatal. Like, it is no joke. It is a serious condition that needs to be treated right away. Now, about a third of the women, young ladies that do get TSS are under the age of 19.
I was super, super pale. I just looked nasty. There was no string. It was just the tampon itself. So it was not visible to anybody of the naked eye. Like, they can't just see the string and be like, oh, toxic shock. It was in there. We think that the string broke, and then I had put another one in, not knowing that there was one already in there.
You're listening to the Visibly Fit podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Wendie Pett, and every week I'll give you holistic, practical solutions for everyday issues related to nutrition, healing, functional fitness, and behavior modifications. As a naturopath, fitness expert, and wellness coach for over 20 years, my goal is to empower you to reach for greater health and to rise up to your next level of living in mind, body, and spirit. You were created with greatness in mind. It's time to own it. Are you with me? Then let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome to the Visibly Fit podcast. I'm your host, Wendie Pett. Thank you for tuning in with me today. I love spending this time with you, and thank you for spending your precious time with me. Maybe you're out for a walk. Maybe you're in the car driving, running an errand. Maybe you're sitting by the pool, soaking in some amazing vitamin D. That sounds really inviting. Wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. And I know there's people from all around the world that tune in. So that's always exciting to see. So thank you as well. I would appreciate if you shared this episode with someone that you know, write a rating and a review, and follow and subscribe. So that's my little shout out on that. So thank you in advance if you do that, because that really takes this podcast to just pushes it up in the rankings a little bit so other people can find it. So thank you. Well, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month, but it's also Women's Health Awareness Month. Actually, last week it was Women's Health Awareness Week. And so I want to touch on both of those topics today. And I'm going to talk on something that's a little bit rare, but I have a guest today that's going to share her story, which is a miracle story. It really is. And she is very special. I'll read her little bio in just a minute, but she's very special to my husband and myself. And so I'm so excited that she's going to share what she's gone through and hopes to educate you and to, just make you aware of this topic. And the topic is toxic shock syndrome. Now, I used to blow this off when my mom would share about that when I was a young girl. I'd say, oh, Mom, they don't make those kind of tampons anymore, and they're safe now, and, yada, yada. I wouldn't take it seriously. I just kind of blew it off. And so I think about that now and just the risk and wow, it's very scary, especially knowing that I know this special guest that I'm having on and what she went through. It's like very eye-opening. And so I want to bring awareness as well. Now, only 1 in about 100,000 women get TSS, toxic shock syndrome, but about 50% of those, it's fatal. Like, it is no joke. It is a serious condition that needs to be treated right away. Now, about a third of the women, young ladies that do get TSS are under the age of 19. And I don't know why that is exactly, except for my thought is they're newer in their years of having their menstrual cycle. And, they're busy at that age. They've got sports and music and school and boys and friends, and they're just busy. And so maybe they're just not thinking about it as much, or maybe like me at that age, they weren't taking it seriously. Whatever the case is, it's usually under the age of 19. So I really want to make you aware, like I'm way past the age of even needing those items. That's right. I'm really that old, but I want you to know, in case you know of somebody, or maybe it's your daughter, your granddaughter, a niece, a friend, that you could educate and really share this episode with somebody else. But toxic shock syndrome is due to bacteria, right? from Staphylococcus bacteria or streptococcal bacteria. And so that you either don't have the antibodies, your immune system's down, or it just fully gets invaded in your body, and it just takes over, right? And it will wreak havoc on your body quickly. So you start to get like symptoms like rashes, you get lethargy, you start vomiting, you get rapid hypertension, and it shuts off which causes the oxygen to be shut off from the organs. And so your body just starts to shut down. Your hands and the soles of your feet start to like slough off. Like it's just, you got to look up pictures. I mean, it's just disgusting, right? Like they just start to peel away and deteriorate. Now, not only women get TSS. That's one thing I want to make clear. Men, children, and postmenopausal women can get toxic shock syndrome. So it's not just a tampon issue. That is the main way that we hear about it. But my goodness, if you have an open wound, or if you have been burned really bad, or even if there's been surgery, or, from childbirth, if you gave childbirth and there's been some bacteria in the hospital, you can get TSS. Okay. So it has to be really addressed, and you need to be made aware of it, because again, I think sometimes we only think about the tampon as being the risk factor, but that's not totally true. It's so much more. So we just need to listen to our bodies, and when it's not doing well, we need to go and see about it quickly. And also just take care of ourselves and be aware. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, if you do choose to wear tampons, that's your deal, but make sure you are wearing non-GMO cotton tampons, okay? And make sure that they are the light absorbency and not the super. You're changing them out often. You're not dealing with the glyphosate herbicide that is in, GMO tampons, because that is a toxin. That is a pesticide, herbicide that is a chemical. It is a chemical that will disrupt your endocrine system in different ways, right? Like can cause endometriosis, could cause fibroids, breast cancer. The list goes on. It's serious business. We want to stay away from chemical toxins, and that's an open area, right? And a lot of times we don't think about that, not just tampons, but even menstrual pads. So make sure it is non-GMO cotton. Okay. Very, very important. Now, I do want to point out that I have a couple episodes that you might want to go and look at or listen to. Episode 78. It's called A Long But Manageable List of Things That You Can Do Today to Stop Disruptions of the Endocrine System. So check that out, episode 78, or episode 108, The Hidden Risks of Forever Chemicals in Your Home. Because we have a lot of chemicals that are around us that maybe we're not aware of, that we could change out and start to change the way our body responds. If you've got some endocrine disruption going on, it might be because of tampons, pads, maybe something in your environment, in your home. So get educated and check that out. But today I have a wonderful, amazing guest. Her name is Hallie Fuglestad, and she is me and my husband. It's our niece, and we are so proud of her. She's so special. She's almost 23 years old, and she went through toxic shock syndrome. Remember, I said she is a miracle walking. She really is. Almost 5 years ago. And she wants to share her story and be an advocate there, and to really create some awareness. But she loves volleyball. She coaches girls volleyball, and she's amazing at it. She's so encouraging and really helps these girls in so many ways over and beyond volleyball. It's one of her biggest blessings in life that she says is coaching volleyball, but she also loves dogs. Like she is a big, big dog lover. She loves to snowboard, and let's see what else. Oh, she just picked up pickleball. So I'm gonna have to play some pickleball with her. So I love that. And she says, I love life, and I love that I get to do what I do. She has come a long way. I'm telling you, wait till you hear her story. Dive in and enjoy the show. Well, welcome, Hallie Fuglestad, to the Visibly Fit podcast. How are you, my dear?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm great. One of my beautiful nieces, I must add.
Thank
I'm so
you.
excited that you took the time. This is such an important topic, and
Yeah.
one that, first of all, I just want to commend you for being willing to speak about toxic shock syndrome because before we even started the show, I was telling you how when I was young, 15, 16, my mom would always warn me about toxic shock syndrome and
Yep.
all the things about tampons, and I would just blow her off. I'm like, Mom, that's old school. They don't make tampons like that anymore. And my friends and I, we would make fun of her and be like, okay, TSS, but it's a real deal.
It
And
is.
it does happen not to a lot of women. It can happen to anyone, not just women,
Yeah.
but we'll go into that later. But one in about every 100,000 women get TSS, but about 50% of those that do get it end up dying. Like you are a miracle walking. And so I want us to dive in quickly about, first of all, um, let's talk about your encounter and what happened. And this was about 4 or 5 years ago. Is that correct?
5 years this December. Yep.
5 years. Wow. We were
Yeah.
praying big time. Your Uncle Todd and I just praying,
I know.
praying. That was a scary time for everybody,
Yeah.
but God is so good. Let's talk about how did you discover that you had toxic shock and what were the symptoms? What did you feel? Did you have a rash? Did you have a fever?
So it was December 11th. It was the night of my first volleyball banquet for college, and I was so excited. I got a new dress and everything, and that's when I still suffered with some anxiety, especially with being sick and being sick away from home. And so I started throwing up that night at campus, and my one of my good friends, she was my roommate the year following, but she was talking to me and she's like, "You don't look too good. How about you go home?" I was super, super pale. I just looked nasty. So I went home and I kept throwing up, and then I went to bed. And the next thing I know, sometime overnight, I moved from my bathroom to my parents' room. My parents then slept on the floor of the living room because they're like, "We're not going to move her. She's sick." And then throughout the night, sometime again, I ended up in my room, and my dad had the day off that next day, which was, again, a miracle because he should have been in the hospital working.
Yeah.
But they came in my room, and I was completely unresponsive, and I actually had soiled myself. So the bed was just a mess. I was just a mess. And they probably took 25, 30 minutes trying to wake me up. And they were like, "Come on, Hallie, we're going to have to call 911. You don't want this cute paramedic guy to come see you like this.
I
Like, come
can hear your
on.
mom saying that.
Like, let's get up. Let's get up." And then they actually tried to get me up. And once they got me up, I immediately collapsed after that. And that's when my dad was like, "Hey, let's call 911. Let's see what we can do with an ambulance."
Wow.
So, yeah.
So, okay. So that's pretty severe and pretty
That,
massive. And you're 18 years old, basically, right?
Yep.
And obviously your dad is a doctor. He knows when someone's not looking so good. So he knew 911, let's get some attention here. But
Yep.
I mean, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so did she forget that she had a tampon in her? Was it because with the anxiety and all the hoopla with everything going on, you literally forgot? Because that can happen.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
it you thought you'd taken it out? Or kind of tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I didn't know it was in there. There was no string. It was just the tampon itself. So it was not visible to anybody of the naked eye. Like they can't just see the string and be like, "Oh, toxic shock." So it was in there. We think that the string broke, and then I had put another one in, not knowing that there was one already in there. And I was at the ER for about 5 hours until the nurse finally did a physical on me. And that's when she found it, and everything kind of aligned there.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And I wouldn't say that that's uncommon, actually.
No.
especially in this busy world that we're all in. And you're like, did I put one in? Did I not? I don't know. I mean, I remember when I was young one time and I went water skiing because I grew up in Texas. We used to water ski and stuff. And I had a really big fall, and all of a sudden, anyway, my tampon was not there. And I'm thinking, did it get shoved up higher? Did it fall out? Like, I freaked out because my mom was always making me nervous about TSS.
Yeah, exactly.
And rightfully so, because things happen.
It can happen.
Or you fall asleep and, whatever. Yep. So when you're in the hospital, how long were you in the hospital?
I was in the ICU, so the intensive care unit, for 6 days. And then I transferred that following day. After that 6th day, I transferred to the normal hospital room. And I was supposed to stay there for 2 more days, but I was so adamant to the doctors because they all knew my dad. And I was like, hey, I really want to see my dogs. I told, I'm fine. I can go home. Let me take these oral meds at home. And so they were very kind enough to let me go a day early. So I was in ICU 6 days and then just the normal hospital for 1 day.
That's good. Well, they knew you were stable or they wouldn't let you leave, but,
yes.
But it's very, scary in the sense that a lot of young women don't really realize that maybe this could happen. They blow it off like I used to when I was young. And to know you and to know what you went through and the prayers that we were just on our knees, just praying to God, like it was just a very touch and go situation, just like your parents were in major prayer and your siblings. And so it's a scary time, but what is the message? Because you were very willing to come onto this podcast, and this is Women's Health Awareness Week. Actually, it was last week, but this month is. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on this month. But while this is rare, it also can happen. And so why are you passionate now to really kind of share more about your story?
I think that there's been so many articles and so many papers and so many different topics about TSS, and a lot of people end up with a lot more damage, I guess, than me. I do have a small heart defect because of this, but it's nothing that really stops me in my day-to-day life. Like, I'm perfectly fine. I'm healthy. I'm 100%. But there's so many people who lose limbs and who lose arms and legs, and they come out way worse, or they have organ failure and all these things because of the disease and because they get so septic. So I think that it's definitely a miracle, and I can't not say anything else, but it was the Lord. To be here today, to be doing everything that I do, and for it not to continue to affect me, that's something that I never really would have understood. I didn't know how serious toxic shock was until a couple weeks after it, and then I kept seeing news articles and different things, and I'm like, why me? Like, why? What gives me the right to come out 100% and then see so many people lose their limbs and come out with organ failure? And I really think that, God did something great, and I'm here, and I can now share this testimony, and I can help others, especially with tampons, and being like, hey, take it out. Like, that's
right. Or don't use them.
Don't use them. Exactly. I'm not allowed to use them anymore.
Right. Right. And it's a testament to God's mercy and his goodness and his hand upon your life. And you're giving him the glory in your story. And that's the ticket. Right. And I know that sounds so cliche, giving him glory for your story, but that's what you're doing. And I think it's beautiful. You mentioned people losing limbs, and there's the high fashion model that you posted about. And this is kind of what triggered this conversation, you and I, about doing this interview. You posted Lauren, is it Wasser or
something like that?
Something like that. And she is, walks the catwalks with golden prostheses, 2 prosthetic legs. And she's being an advocate and sharing her story to create awareness. But what's so great is that you're able to not only create awareness and share, but you're also able to share about the Lord.
I am.
And that's the ticket. And he knew that. And I believe that maybe that's not that that's why it happened to you, but that's why, he could trust you with the story, I guess, is the thing. So that's so cool. So not only has he brought you through toxic shock syndrome, but since we are on the topic, you mentioned it about anxiety. This is also Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's talk a little bit about that. Are you open to that?
Absolutely.
Because he has also healed you of your massive anxiety, and it's huge, huge.
Yeah, it all kind of plays into toxic shock, I feel like. I was diagnosed with anxiety at a very young age. This was the separation anxiety aspect of things. So I was connected to my mom's hip for like 7 years. I slept in the same room as her. She came to classes every single day for 2 years with me. I had to be present with her because I was so fearful something was going to happen to her. And that definitely, it took away my childhood. I didn't have sleepovers. I didn't hang out with friends. I didn't go to birthday parties. I didn't do the normal things that kids did because I needed my mom. She sometimes couldn't come with me and I couldn't go then.
Well, hold on a second. Before we go further, what do you think created that fear? What do you think in your mind, where did that stem from?
So it was in 4th grade. I had one day at St. John's. This is where I went for my little schooling. And I had my mom drop me off. And then she went to go get a coffee. And during that time, I had my first panic attack. And not knowing that it was actually an anxiety attack. But because we weren't aware of anxiety, I didn't have it. I wasn't diagnosed previously. And after that day, everything just went south. And so I don't think it was necessarily just her leaving to go get coffee. I think my brain probably thought something which stemmed to everything, but that was the first time that I suffered through an anxiety attack, and then the rest came along.
Yeah, and it's amazing how it can be a tactic of the enemy, right? Like he'll keep building upon that moment. Remember when, and then it makes it even worse and more anxious feelings. And I mean, you know who you are in Christ. Like you are healed and whole. And it's just so beautiful to see. I mean, I've known you all these years, but to see you then and now, I mean, it's just miraculous. And it's we just give praises to God, but it's so cool to see how he is our ultimate physician. He's our healer.
He is. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you were just ready to be healed and done with it all. But having TSS, let's talk about how you really believe that having that, along with the anxiety, it kind of came together where he was able to heal both at the same time.
Yeah. So the moment that I overcame my anxiety and I knew that I kicked its butt was one night I was sleeping over at my best friend at the time, her house, and she has a very godly family. They love the Lord, and her mom prayed over me that night. And it was a prayer that just everybody has said before, just a normal prayer. But that night, I was super anxious. She prayed over me. I had no anxiety. And an hour later, I fell asleep. And then the next morning, I just started crying because I was like, I did it. Like, I'm done with this now. Like, I kicked its butt. I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I did it. And she was so happy because I hadn't had a sleepover in 7 years. So that was the moment that I really was like, oh, yeah, I can really do anything. Like, yes, it took 7 years, but I learned a lot in those 7 years, I feel like. And then, especially with depression and mental health, I suffered through that. There was a point where I was suicidal, especially with the anxiety. And up till 2019, when I was in the hospital, after that, I knew that I'm like, I don't want to die. I may suffer through a lot of things. I may have a lot of depression still, but I'm here on this earth for a reason. And I'm excited to share my testimony and help others, especially with mental health and anxiety and toxic shock too.
Good. So good, Hallie. Yes, you are ready to be delivered, to be healed, and to receive his goodness. And I think sometimes that might just be the thing. You were ready. Like, yes, your friend's mom prayed over you, but your mom's prayed over you a million times. Your dad, we have it wasn't the right time. You weren't ready, but you were ready in that moment to receive and just to be washed clean and just to have those healing tears. I mean, it's such a beautiful experience. So I love that. So what would you say to somebody right now that might be listening, and I don't know that my audience is typically your age range, but maybe there are a few that listen, but they still have daughters or nieces or granddaughters your age. What would you say to, first of all, maybe someone your age that might be struggling, and then maybe to someone who has a loved one, whether it's their daughter or a granddaughter, and how would they approach someone that might be struggling? Two different questions.
Yeah. I think with seeing someone struggling with, let's say, anxiety at my age, I think the biggest thing to know, because at my age when I was struggling through it, nobody told me that I was going to get through it, really, besides like my mom. But I hadn't had someone who had struggled with anxiety and who knows what it feels like and how deliberating it is and how it consumes your whole entire life. And so I have been able to help others, especially my age, and I tell them you're gonna be able to overcome it. It's God's time. It's not your time. As much as you may want to kick it in the butt now, God might have this path for you for another year, but you're gonna grow from it. You're gonna learn from it, and this isn't something that consumes your entire life, even if it feels like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. And then what would you say to maybe a parent or a grandparent that has a loved one that is struggling, and maybe they don't have the right words, because sometimes we are lacking in the way to connect, and we want to help, but maybe it's just not the right words. What would you say would have been the words you needed to hear?
I think just being there presently for them, like being there and supporting them through every single day. My mom and my dad were my biggest supporters, and I would not be here whatsoever without them. Yes. So just loving on them and letting them know that, God is good, but to rely more so on God than just assuming it's going to be done. I don't think I'd be where I am, without God and without the Lord being there and being so present, especially with my anxiety. So I definitely say, if there's a loved one, support them. Because that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest blessing my parents were able to give me.
Yeah, 100%. That's so good, Hallie. And like you mentioned, just be there, right? Maybe you don't need to say anything, but just be there. Just be present and be willing to just be a shoulder to cry on or whatever. Or like your mom going to class with you every day. Oh, my word. I mean, that's amazing. Props to Carla, because that's just incredible. But yeah, just being there is incredible. And there may be some people listening that are your age or younger, and they're like, yeah, I would love to have somebody be there, but I don't.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because maybe someone's like, I do. I want to be able to have some support, but I just don't know where to go. What would you suggest for them? Obviously, the Lord is 100%, but in addition, what would you tell them?
Tell them to open up the Bible. There's many times where I had to, and I didn't know what I was reading. I just kind of opened it up, and I just have to sit there and be present, because anxiety is so powerful. I feel like that when you are just there and it's sitting in you, that feeling doesn't go away. It doesn't just, hey, I'll be here for 5 minutes. Like, it can consume you for the entire day. And I think the biggest thing was the Bible and praying and understanding that I may feel alone, but I'm not.
So good. Preach it, girl. Come on, Hallie. That's so good. And of course, there are, some practical techniques like deep breathing, box breathing, cold plunges, exercising, eating well. I mean, there's all these things that I could just list out that go along with that can help reduce and get rid of anxiety. But you've done the work. And I think that that's the biggest message too, is to do the work and to get through it. But on the last kind of side of things, since we're kind of jumping in on this on toxic shock syndrome, is there anything, I guess, that you would want to share with somebody in relation to what you experienced, so that they won't have to experience it? Or, I know you've kind of covered the story and don't use tampons and that kind of thing. But is there something that you learned over and beyond that maybe you would share with your daughter someday?
Yeah, I think that just being cautious and taking care of yourself is the biggest thing. especially with being a female and having these monthly things. Like, we have to be prioritizing it. I've read the box. I've read Toxic Shock. I didn't expect to almost die from a tampon, but here I am. Like, it's not something that you can just be like, it's not going to happen.
That's right.
Like, that's something crazy. It's very rare. It's not common. It's not normal. It's like, so I definitely say be careful and understand and put yourself first so that something may not happen, because it's possible, but there's precautions that we can take and there's things that we can do for this not to happen to someone.
That's right. That's so good. Very good, Hallie. Well, you are an amazing, remarkable young woman, and I'm proud to be your auntie, and just love you dearly. I love when we have card playing nights and game nights and all the family stuff that we get to do. I would love to do even more of it. But thank you for coming on to Visibly Fit and sharing your story and your passion and your love for the Lord. I'm very proud of you. I'm going to ask you just a couple personal fun questions just because I don't know. I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
Because I may not know this about you. Do you have like a hidden talent or something that you can do that, I mean, not that you'd go on America's Got Talent with it, but maybe there's something that you can do. Like, I don't know, maybe you play the ukulele or something I don't know about that you want to share with everybody. I know you love dogs. I know you, and you're passionate about animals, but is there like a hidden talent that I don't know about?
I'd say snowboarding. I don't think my family's not a snowboarder. My dad skis, my brother skis. Nobody really has taken up snowboarding in the family. And one day I just kind of did it, and we realized that I was good at it and that I'm kind of ambidextrous when it comes to snowboarding. I'm able to kind of do everything. So I'd say that's at least one of my hidden talents.
That's awesome. Yeah, you need to kick it with Keegan because he is a snowboarder, loves it.
Yes.
We got to arrange that sometime. All right. Well, I love you, and thank you for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you so much.
All right. God bless you, honey.
Bye.
Take care.
You too.
All right. Well, I so loved having Hallie on. Super fun. And, it's one of those things that most people don't talk a lot about. They don't talk about toxic shock syndrome, but it happens. It happens. So I wanted to bring this to your awareness. I wanted you to understand that this can be an issue, not just in Hallie's life, but in maybe a loved one. And so since this is kind of Women's Health Month, it was last week, but it's still the month, I wanted you to hear her story and to be able to not just be prepared and prevent something like that could be deathly, but also be aware of the anxiety issues too, since this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So anyway, if you are just listening to this podcast for the first time, please share it with others. Please give it a rating and a review, follow, subscribe. Greatly appreciate that. And make sure you do the due diligence and taking good care of yourself. I think Hallie is a great example of being an overcomer. So super proud of her and her story, and it's God's story. So, all right. And if you are looking for a health and wellness program to get you through to the other side of your health issues, maybe you're overweight, maybe you're on medications that you want to get off of, maybe you're dealing with, from hypertension to high cholesterol to maybe you're type 2 diabetic. I don't know, but we can work together in mind, body, spirit, emotions, get you on a new eating routine, get you using your body as your gym, and get you into a place of hopefully reversing that dis-ease in the body and getting you into a healthy state of being so you can operate at your optimal level. If you're looking for something like that, looking for a community and a coach like myself, a naturopath to take you through the program, just go to getvisiblyfit.com and you can either just join right there, or if you want to email me and you have questions, you can do that too at Wendie@wendiepett.com. But thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Visibly Fit. We'll catch you next time right here, same time, same place, right here on Visibly Fit. Take care. Be blessed.
Well, that's a wrap for today's show. So thank you so much for tuning in. I love spending this time with you. To learn more and get more free resources, just head on over to wendiepett.com. And thank you in advance for sharing this episode and this podcast, following and subscribing not only to this podcast, but finding me on social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are, I'm probably there too. Until next week and our next podcast time together, make it a Visibly Fit day.